Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen, and I'm the Executive Director at USTA Florida. And today, we're going to talk about National Tennis Month. And I have two amazing guests who are going to join me to talk about all the work that we're doing to advocate for tennis in the month of May. First up, we have Greg Lappin. Greg is the Delivery Council Chair for USTA. Welcome to the podcast, Greg. It's nice to have you.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it.
And joining Greg is Robin Jones. Robin wears a couple of hats. She is the Vice Chair of USTA's Advocacy Committee, and she also is the Senior Facility Consultant for USTA's Tennis Venue Services team. Robin, thank you for joining me today on the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm very excited to have you both here. I get to work with you day to day in different capacities. But today, since you're new to this podcast, I thought maybe we'd start by having each of you share a little bit about where you live, how you got involved in tennis, and what your current role entails. And Greg, I thought I'd start with you.
Okay. Actually, growing up, my first love was baseball, but I was a bit mischievous as a child. In a ninth grade baseball team, when the shortstop came in, I shoved grass down each finger of his mitt, and the coach didn't appreciate that, and I got kicked off the team. So in 10th grade, I went out for tennis, and the rest is history. I was fortunate enough to play in college, and my career was always in tennis as a teaching pro. Then the grace of God, I got into club development and management, and I live in Minnesota, where we have large indoor wellness, fitness, and tennis clubs. And I spent my life working in those. And since tennis has been my career, also it's been my love. So I spent about 25 years now as a volunteer with the USGA, both locally and nationally. And like we mentioned, I'm honored to serve as the chair of the Delivery Council, which does deliver the game at CTAs, adaptive, advocacy, and public parks.
Awesome. Well, we're kind of glad you were a little mischievous there when you were younger. So baseball's loss was our game. Robin, tell us a little bit about where you live, how you got involved in tennis, and what your current role is.
Well, I live in Cary, North Carolina right now, and but I got involved in tennis when I lived in Texas back in the 1990s. And I was very politically active in our town, and I caught the tennis bug in my mid-30s, late 30s. And the gal that was starting our tennis program said, "Hey, you're involved in politics. And I said, "Well, what can I do to help you?" She said, "Well, you're going to figure out how to get a tennis center built in this town." And I just kind of stared at her. But I was working on a city council campaign at the time, and when the candidate won, he came over to my house, and we had a celebratory glass of wine, and he said, "What committee do you want to be on?" And I was shocked, and I said, and that conversation went through my mind, and I said, Parks and Recreation. So 5 years later, we got a tennis facility, and shortly thereafter, I moved to Cary, North Carolina, 2001. And Cary, part of the reason we moved here was because they had just approved the building of a 30-court facility. So I came in thinking I was going to, run a few leagues for them, and I ended up founding the tennis association here, which is now called Western League. And ever since then, everything I've done has been involved in tennis. So I ended up being on the advocacy committee, and then I got recruited for the facilities work, and it's just, been one big happy event. So thoroughly enjoy it.
Very, very happy to have you, and very happy to have you in North Carolina, and also very happy that you're going to share your expertise along with Greg with our audience here in Florida, because I don't know any state and any area that doesn't need more help advocating, particularly for tennis courts and some other things that we need right now. So I think I got the right two people on this podcast to talk about it. So our topic today is National Tennis Month. It's May, which is National Tennis Month. So Robin, I'm going to stay with you for just a minute. Can you share with us a little history about how National Tennis Month came to be, and why is it in the month of May?
Actually, we used to do something at the USTA, like a national tennis night out, but it was mostly spearheaded by the national office and staff. And about in 2021, here, Francisconi, who is the advocacy chair, and I started talking about we need to have a national tennis month. Everybody else has a month, but we wanted it to be volunteer-led, coming directly from the local communities. And so one thing led to another, and we were fortunately able to get the support of people like Greg, and then went behind the scenes talking to a few in leadership. And the reason it's in May is because we had this discussion in December and we knew we couldn't do anything before May. So plus it was, kids were getting out of school, and we thought that was a perfect time right before the summer months when people could go in, pick up tennis. We could promote it across the country. And so it's just remained May.
Awesome. Well, yes, it's definitely true. Kids are getting out of school, and I know here in Florida we're ready for summer camps. So it's definitely a good time to get kids into the game across the nation. Greg, I want to turn to you from a more of an industry perspective. You also wear a number of hats as, somebody who's been involved with club ownership and management, and a member of PTA, PTR, all of the industry groups. From an industry perspective, how do you see National Tennis Month helping our industry highlight the growth that we're having and maybe come together to address some of the challenges?
Well, yeah, National Tennis Month is really taken off. And first, maybe I can quick comment a little bit on Robin before I get to industry, is that this is really the USTA at its best, is National Tennis Month, because it was started by volunteers like Robin and Peter did. The Delivery Council with their committees really embraced it last year, and it really took off. And this year, even more so, like people like you at the section are embracing it. A lot of help with national marketing. National staff has been helping. All the different councils, adult council has really taken off and having activities as well as school programs. So it's volunteers at the district, section, national level, staff at the district, national staff level have really embraced this. And this is why it's taken off. And like you said, it has filtered over into the industry. Being in Minnesota, we're USTA Northern, it was great to see an advertisement come to all USTA Northern members a week ago that Dick's Sporting Goods had 3 days of 20% off at their stores if you were a USTA member supporting National Tennis Month. So the industry has really embraced it. A lot of clubs, the public parks have done a lot with this. Our Public Parks Committee has the list of all the state EDs for the National Park and Rec Association. Materials have been sent out to them. They send it out to local park and recs. So a wide variety of industry partners have really embraced this. And the momentum of National Tennis Month is really great this year. And there are thousands of people that are participating in National Tennis Month activities. So it's really been fun to see the UST at its best and this really take off.
That's a great recap. And I know here we have a little bit of challenges in terms of our state doesn't do those types of proclamations, unfortunately, but a lot of the municipalities do. And we've had some of our public parks like Palm Beach Gardens Tennis Center go to their city councils, get proclamations, do special events. So it's been really nice to see the local facilities and parks get involved and do their celebrations. So great overview there. I do want to break down maybe some of the other activities that are happening for National Tennis Month and maybe share some of the ways our audiences can get involved who might listen to the podcast this week and say, hey, I want to do something. So Robin, can you give us a few highlights of the work that is happening in various areas to spotlight National Tennis Month, just to get those ideas flowing?
Well, each month or each year, we've come up with a different, this year we're calling them sweepstakes. So basically, it's a contest that's a challenge to individual communities. Last year, we gave away 10 pairs of tickets to the U.S. Open. I think we've got even more going on this year. But last year, we focused on collecting advocacy stories, just in general, from people across the United States. And we had close to 200 communities submit stories of how they were able to advocate in their local communities for tennis. Those are going to be used to update the National Advocacy Handbook. This year, we've got a sweepstakes, and we are collecting stories about National Tennis Month. So what did you do that was successful in your community to highlight National Tennis Month? And then also, we're challenging every community and state to obtain a proclamation from their governor or their city council or their mayor to declare May National Tennis Month. And we're already well on our way with close to 100 entries for that. And we're just in the first week of May. So those are two very specific ways that people can get involved. And in addition, it seems like every community really wants to have a special event and bring in people that aren't tennis players to the world of tennis and see why we're growing so fast and why it's such a great sport.
Love it. Greg, turning back to you, you talked a little bit about the clubs in Minnesota and different things that are happening up there. Could you share a little bit about what some of the providers, parks, or other industry groups are doing to celebrate that might help other clubs and providers, come up with some ideas on things they can do this month?
Sure. And I'll just reiterate what Robin said. I think one of the best things we've done with resurrecting National Tennis Month is put together the whole manual on different ideas. And it's available at USTA/NTM. And in there are, I think, 70 some, Robin can correct me, what we call success stories. Also, you can call them best practices of things you can do. And what I like about that are two things. One is it isn't just confined to National Tennis Month. These are ideas you can use 12 months of the year to grow the game. And what I learned in 40 years of managing tennis and athletic clubs is that I believe very strongly is publicity and promotion is much better in getting people to come into your door than advertising. So that's what these list of best practices and success stories are so helpful. Let me give you one. That I did. We had a guy who played basketball every day over lunch hour at our club, and he owned a McDonald's in town. So I said, Jack, I have an idea. I said, we're doing this National Tennis Month idea. I said, would you allow me to put a flyer on every tray and a flyer in every bag you hand out about National Tennis Month? And I went to the Park and Rec in my city and got them to do it too. It just wasn't selfish for my club. And when I asked him this, he almost had a tear in his eye. And he said, you're the first person who's ever offered me something as opposed to ask. So we had flyers in their bags and on their trays, and that was a hugely successful event, a way to attract people to get into the facility and play tennis. And tennis carnivals, all those ideas are there. So I can't stress enough to go to the website and look at this great manual that Robin was instrumental in putting it together. There are tons of ideas there that different people in the industry are doing. It's just a no-brainer to use it.
Yeah, I think if I can just add, these weren't just ideas that, two or three of us put together and said, oh, this will be a good idea. We actually went to every committee at the USTA and said, okay, if you're someone who's working with an NJTL committee, would you come up with at least 15 ideas of how you can promote NJTL? We did the same thing with parks. We did the same thing with CTAs. So no matter who you are or how you're affiliated with the USTA, there's something there for you to use or come up with your own idea.
Yeah, and what I love about your example, Greg, we talk a lot here about, we've talked about advocacy, and we talk about it with our own facilities that we manage. And one of the things we always say is get outside of your fence. And I think a lot of times, we think about marketing and promotions, but we think about bringing people in. And the McDonald's example is such a good one of where are the places in your community where almost everyone goes? I mean, who doesn't go to McDonald's, right? We all do. So when it comes to advocacy, a lot of it is getting outside of your own bubble and your own fence and going out to be part of your community and really talking about what's happening and promoting the game and tennis. And I think you all just gave some great examples. I want to stay on resources for a minute because you both touched on the handbook, but I also know there's a lot of other resources out there to maybe help those local advocates who are trying to promote tennis in their communities. So, Greg, from your perspective, what resources can our providers, our teaching professionals, our parks and rec, et cetera, use to deliver more tennis this month? Like, what's out there for them that could help them get more people on the courts?
I guess I'd answer that by, again, going to that resource guide, because like Robin just said, I think all the answers are there. And there's a wide variety of things you can do. I mean, to host a tennis carnival. I mean, hopefully everyone's done those kind of things. But I go back to the idea of who do you think you could partnership? Could you go to a local church and offer a church senior youth group to come in on a Sunday night? Go to the local singles club and offer them to have an activity where they could come into your facility and have a tennis and pizza afterwards. I'm sure they would jump at something like that. So I think it's just being creative and think of all the different groups you have in your community and who you really could partner with. I think the list for that is really endless.
That's a great call out to really identify those local partners. Robin, what other resources come to your mind? We talked a lot about the handbook, but what other things are out there that may be available to our advocates year round?
Yeah, well, specifically on the NTM website, which is USTA.com/NTM, we have put all kinds of resources. We've got buck slips that people can pass out. We have press releases that you can customize. We have banners that you can download the artwork for. We have T-shirt logos that you can download and print your own T-shirts. As far as the proclamations that we're encouraging people to do, they can download the proclamation, and all they have to do is fill in their name and contact their state. It's got one-page direction on exactly how to do it and who to contact. So we do have a lot of resources on that NTM page. And then I also would encourage every tennis community leaders to go to USTA.com/advocacy. There is just a plethora of information on the advocacy website, from, a handbook to success stories on how other people have gotten tennis facilities built, or how they've promoted tennis and grown their leagues, how they've worked with schools. I mean, how they worked with park and rec departments, city councils. It's endless, really, too much to even mention. But it's all there. We're trying to capture as much as we can and keep it updated. So I would highly encourage every tennis person, which is a tennis advocate, if you love tennis, to go and take a look there.
Awesome. And we'll put those links, obviously, in the podcast as well and in the posts that we do. And also just a reminder to our audience that USTAFlorida.com has some additional resources specific to Florida, including sort of our growth numbers, how much tennis is growing, some of those stories that both Robin and Greg referred to of stories of providers who are growing tennis. Those will be posted throughout the month, and then some additional resources there to help you become an advocate. So we'll drop both links in the podcast posts that we do so that you all can find them easily and check back often, because I think USTA and USTA Florida both continue to post resources on those pages throughout the year. So there usually is something new and fresh going on that, every local advocate can use. So my final question is the same question for both of you. Tennis is experiencing its biggest boom to date. What do you see as the biggest challenges we have, and what can we do to keep tennis growing for many years to come? So, Robin, I'll start with you, and then Greg, you can chime in as well.
I see one of the biggest challenges are spaces to play, places to play, a lack of facilities. Like I always say, if you don't have a place to play, it doesn't matter how many programs you create. You've got to have a place to play. So I think it's important that everybody in all tennis communities are aware of tennis venue services. We offer everything from grant funding on down to advocacy services, technical review. If I can just bring up a kind of an interesting story, we saw that Los Angeles went after the World Cup for the future, and they designed the facility, and FIFA came back and said, "You don't have enough space. We can't play a final match there." So it's really important that you know what the regulations for building a tennis court are. And we can give you advice on that through tennis venue services. I also hate to bring up the P word, but pickleball is a challenge for everyone. And I'm not saying that as a slight, but we're growing and we need our facilities so badly to, keep up with capacity for tennis players. When people are trying to play pickleball on tennis courts, it's reducing our footprint, our facilities. So I do think that as we move forward in the future, I think it's going to be really important for tennis communities to get behind the pickleball efforts and go join them to advocate at your city council and Park and Rec for pickleball's own spaces, because we just can't continue to lose our real estate.
And the good news, Robin, is that's already happened in the state of Florida. So we're sort of, I think, because pickleball started here so long ago,
you're ahead of
we've already kind of passed that point. And even in a private club space, we have some developers who've gone out, and we now have the pickleball club, which is building several locations in the state. So I think organically that's happened. And I think the more that both groups can do to say, hey, we need dedicated places to play, don't take away the tennis courts. And USTA has some new materials coming out. I think the buck slips have been updated to really talk more specifically to that point, is that nobody wins when they're combined. So I do appreciate you bringing that up, because we've learned that probably the hard way over the last 5 years here.
I think that just can't keep piling people on top of each other. It just causes ill will and bad feelings, and nobody wins.
That's right. And the municipality often is stuck in the middle. So the more we can help, the better.
Right.
Greg, what would you add to that list in terms of the challenges we have and what we can do to keep tennis growing?
Well, you both expressed it very well. There's the shortage of courts and having enough courts and working with pickleball. So no point for me to discuss that again. The point I always make, I think is really critical, is that our providers and people understand that people do not play tennis for tennis. People play tennis for the benefits of tennis. And to me, that's not trite. That's really critical to understand. And what's nice is tennis has been proven to be the best form of exercise anybody can play. So first are all the health benefits. And the USTA has put together some documents that people can use to show that. So the health benefits of tennis are great. But also, it's the camaraderie. It's a mother playing with a son, or all four family members going out and play doubles. It's business contacts. It's the social. I'm new to town. I can create friends in tennis. Maybe my spouse has passed away. I'm lonely. I can go be part of a tennis group. So I'm a child who maybe is shy, and my parents take me to a tennis class, and another mother walks over and goes, "Our kids seem to get along. Would you like to play together?" Man, that parent would be elated. But to understand, people come for tennis for the benefits to them. And it's critical that we as providers understand what benefits they're looking for. And if we can match the benefit to the need, then what we have is retention. And I think it's great we've got a tennis boom, but we have to keep them. And to keep them is to understand they're there for the benefits of tennis and not tennis. And as providers, we have to have our antenna out and understand what we're doing is creating a positive lifestyle. And if we can do that, tennis will continue to grow and we'll continue to retain our customers. I think that's really critical. Providers understand what I think is a tremendously fundamental point.
Yeah, I love that. And for those listening, if you haven't seen our February 15th podcast with Dr. Brian Hainline, where he talks about tennis as the ideal sport for physical and mental well-being, it's a great listen, and it really does cover why that is and many of those health benefits. And we have some additional materials that I think Greg mentioned posted under that podcast. So all great points. Thank you both so very much for sharing all that's happening, all that we can do to grow the game, and for all the time, energy, and effort that you both put in as volunteers to create these resources and help everyone else benefit from them. We're definitely better because of you both, and I appreciate that I get the chance to work with you as part of the advocacy committee. So again, thank you for joining me today, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having us. We enjoyed this. It's great to be able to speak with like-minded people who will, and hopefully we will give some ideas to those that listen to the podcast.
Excellent.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For those of you who are listening to the audio-only version of this podcast, be sure to visit USTA Florida's YouTube channel, where you can see the full video version of the podcast. And for past episodes and upcoming topics and dates, visit USTAFlorida.com/here to serve. Thank you for tuning in and have a wonderful rest of your day.